If you enjoy these bedtime journeys, please take a moment to subscribe so you never miss the next dream. Settle in. Breathe out slowly. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day drift to the very edges of your room like a peaceful tide pulling away from the shore. Tonight we will wander into a world of candlelight and quiet music, where roses bloom in winter and a castle listens like a friend. We will travel slowly. We will speak softly. We will give your thoughts a gentle place to rest. Find a comfortable position. Adjust your blanket. Notice how the pillow cradles your head. The room is safe. The world can wait. You are here. You are warm. You are allowed to release every worry now, like tiny paper boats set free upon a moonlit stream. In this story, kindness will be the key that opens every locked door. Patience will be a lantern that never goes out. And love, true love, will be a quiet truth that grows where fear once lived. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. If your breath deepens, let it deepen. You cannot miss this story because the story will wait for you. It will be here when you return from sleep. For now, we begin together, slowly, gently, with the softest of steps. Listen, a house once bustling with trade and laughter has become a humble cottage at the edge of a forest. Inside lives a family who once owned ships and silk and shining things. Now they have wood smoke and a small garden and the quiet pride of honest work. In that home is a daughter called Beauty, whose heart is a clear window and whose voice is a warm cup held between two hands. And beyond that forest is a castle with many rooms and few footsteps, fireplaces that leap to life when a chill enters the air, teacups that clink by themselves and enjoy the ritual of evening, corridors where portraits seem to breathe as if they are waiting for a story to set them free. This is where we are going, and we will go there gently, on the softest path. Take one more deep breath in and out. We begin Chapter 1. The Merchant's Daughter and the Rose. Morning has a way of touching certain homes like a blessing. It begins as a pale silver at the window, a careful glow at the curtain's edge, and then it fills the floorboards and the chairs and the breakfast table with a tender gold. In a small cottage near the forest, that light finds Beauty already awake, already tidying the jars on the shelf, already humming to the kettle that will soon sing its thin, bright note. She moves quietly so others can sleep. She loves the hush of early hours. She sets bread to warm beside the little stove and brushes a bit of flour from her cheek with the back of her hand. Outside, the garden keeps its own small promises. Herbs that will flavor soup, a row of vegetables that will become a simple stew, dew on the leaves glittering like a string of tiny stars that decided to rest here for a while. This family was not always here. Their story used to be loud with coins and contracts and the creak of ship ropes. Their father, a merchant, was a kind man who traveled for trade, shipping precious cloth and fragrant spices that sang of faraway lands. The house used to ring with visitors and bright gossip about markets and ports, but the sea is a keeper of her own counsel, and one season she swallowed the family's fortune in a single sorrowful breath. Ships lost, cargo gone, promises changed. And so they came to this cottage, where money is thin as paper and work is thick as clay. Beauty does not mind. She loves the crisp honesty of sweeping a floor and seeing it clean. She loves the way a broom speaks in soft strokes and steady rhythms. She loves the way a pot slowly offers its warmth to a room. To Beauty, simplicity is not a loss. It is a clear sky that lets you see the moon. Her sisters, older and elegant in their own eyes, miss the soft chairs, the mirrors, the lace. They miss being admired. They miss the hum of importance around their names. They are not unkind, but when they speak about their old life, the air sometimes grows colder. Beauty answers them with patient warmth, as if her words are shawls to place around their shoulders. Often, they do not notice. That is all right. She notices enough for everyone. Their father rises late this morning, for his dreams were heavy and the fire was low in the night. Beauty brings him tea. He smiles and thanks her, and in his eyes you can see a man who has held storms and still believes in calm. Later he brings news to the table in a voice that tries to be steady and not too eager. He has received a letter. One of his ships, lost to rumor and worry, has been found in a distant harbor. There is a chance, a thin chance, a dear chance, that some of their fortune might yet be returned. He will travel to the city to see what can be saved. The sisters come alive like birds startled from a tree. Dresses, they say, ribbons, fine shoes. If luck returns, they will need proper things to greet it. They ask their father for gifts, simple requests spoken as if they are ordinary weather. The eldest wants a necklace that lies flat and cold at her throat like a calm pond. The second wants a mirror that softens the truth just a little, so mornings feel kinder to her face. The father nods, though his purse is light. He loves his daughters and their hopes, large or small. He turns to Beauty. "And you, my dear?" Beauty looks out the window a moment. She watches a cloud move like a slow ship across the blue. "If you find one," she says, careful and shy, "bring me a rose." Her sisters laugh, lightly, not cruelly, but without understanding. A rose? When there might be jewels, perfumes, fabrics kissed by distant suns. Beauty only smiles. The father understands. He thinks of his little garden in spring, and of his late wife's hands, which used to shape a vine around a simple trellis with such care you might think she was speaking to it. "A rose," he says softly. "If I find one, I will bring it." The morning passes. The father prepares to travel. Beauty folds a scarf for him, the one that holds the smell of hearth smoke and home. The sisters talk about shops and the color of ribbons. Beauty reminds them about supper and sweeps the last of the crumbs into her palm. Outside, the forest looks both near and far. It is a place of quiet opinion, where every tree says stand, and every bird says return. When the father leaves, Beauty follows to the gate. She holds his hand a moment longer than usual. "Be careful," she says, not as a command, but as a blessing. He kisses her brow. "Always," he promises, and steps onto the road. Time becomes gentle. Days fold into one another like linens stacked in a calm cupboard. Beauty keeps the house content, not perfect. She likes a bit of life in the corners, a thread, a petal, a shadow of flower. She reads in the evening by a modest candle and lets words walk through her mind with unhurried feet. She visits the garden after dusk and thanks the soil for its work, the way one thanks a friend who shows up without being asked. But beyond their little world, the city is busy with accounts and confirmations, with news that clatters and news that whispers. The father's hopes are tested. The ship may be found, yes, but its cargo is not. Debts stand up and ask to be met. Promises stand beside them and wait their turn. The father pays what he can. He says the word sorry with the dignity of someone who means it. Night comes down like a curtain. He tries again the next day, and the next. When he finally sets out for home, winter has taken a breath. The countryside holds a clean, white hush. The road is softer underfoot. as if the world is wrapped in a blanket. He walks until the light thins and the sky grows thoughtful. Snow begins to fall in giant, forgiving flakes, slow, sleepy things that wish no harm. Still, the wind has ideas of its own, and the father pulls his scarf closer and looks for any path that leads to warmth. He sees it then, a gate, tall and wrought with delicate iron vines, standing open as if it has been expecting him. Beyond it, a long avenue lined with snow-dusted trees. At the end, a castle with windows glimmering like eyes that remember how to smile. He hesitates. He is a polite man. He does not enter homes uninvited, but the cold is an argument, and the open gate is a promise. And his steps carry him forward almost kindly, one and then another, until he stands before great doors that part without a hand to move them. Inside is wonder and something like relief. Fire leaps to life in a nearby hearth with a sound like laughter pressed through wood. A table sets itself, a cup, a bowl, a steaming broth that smells of time and comfort. He calls out, "Hello, my thanks to the generous host." His voice returns to him altered by the hall's height, like a bird that flew up and came back with a story. No one answers, and yet everything answers. The chair pulls itself back to welcome him. The spoon leans gently and says, without words, "Eat." He eats. He warms his hands. He listens to the architecture breathe. When he grows drowsy, a door opens onto a room dressed in gold and quiet. A bed waits there, like the idea of sleep made real. He whispers, "Thank you," again to the air, places his boots neatly, and allows the night to gather him up. Morning in the castle is soft as a secret. Snowlight makes the windows a tender gray. Somewhere a clock ticks, but not to urge or hurry, only to accompany. The father thinks of his daughters. He thinks of the gifts he could not bring. He thinks of Beauty's request, a rose, and smiles sadly at his own empty hands. Winter does not keep roses. But this castle keeps more than winter. He walks into a garden as surprising as a dream, warm, green, and gently misted, as if the air has decided to remember summer. Between clipped hedges and pearly fountains grow roses in every shade, quiet blush, deep wine, shy cream, midnight red that shines like velvet. He cannot help it. He laughs, the softest sound, the kind of laugh that releases a knot in the chest. "Beauty," he says aloud, as if she were beside him, "I can bring you this." He chooses carefully. He touches no more than he needs to. He selects a single bloom with petals like a sigh. He lifts the stem and, ever so delicately, breaks it free. The garden changes when he does. The light alters. The air grows still. Somewhere a bird decides not to sing after all. The father looks up, and his breath, warm a moment ago, goes cold in his throat. "Thief," says a voice like a door in a mountain, deep, carrying the ache of years. "You repay my kindness with harm." The father turns. Before him stands a figure large as loneliness and twice as quiet. Fur like night. Horns curved like thoughts that never arrived at words. Eyes that burn and do not burn, because they are somehow both flame and rain. "I meant no harm," the father says, hands open, heart open. "I was a guest I did not intend to be. I thought I was alone. My daughter asked for a rose." "So you would take what is not yours," says the shape, and the words are stern but not cruel. "You ate my food, you slept in my bed, you warmed your hands by my fire, and then you broke the one thing in this garden that still believes it is summer." The father bows his head. He does not make excuses. He is brave enough to be sorry. "You are right," he says. "I did wrong. Punish me if you must. but forgive me if you can." The beast, the name, arrives without being spoken. Breathes, the breath is heavy. It tastes of old promises and almosts. "There is a price," he says, and the word is not a threat, only the shape of a rule. "Your life for the theft." The father closes his eyes. Every parent knows certain sums. He nods. "As you say." Silence opens around them like a circle drawn in snow. In that circle stands a man who loves and a creature who is used to being feared. The circle holds both. "Unless," the beast says, and the word is a bridge. "Unless one of your daughters will come in your place, willingly, not tricked, not forced. She must choose it freely. She must live here. She must dine with me each evening. The rose will be the sign." The father's heart breaks and mends in the same instant. He would never ask this. He would never want this. He also knows his youngest would hear these words and see, somehow, a path through them to light. "I will return alone," he says, because that is what he intends. "Do not trouble yourself." The beast's eyes, which have watched so many departures, look deeper, and their light is not cruel. "Take the horse waiting at the gate," he says. He knows the way. "And take the rose. A promise began with it. A promise may yet be kept." The father leaves the castle with steps that weigh more than snow. The horse is strong and careful. It takes him home as if it has learned the map of his worry. The forest passes like a prayer one repeats to stay steady. The cottage appears, small and brave against the white. Beauty sees him first. She runs to the gate, cheeks bright with cold and love. She sees the rose in his hand and the shadow in his eyes. She knows, of course she knows. Inside, by the fire, he tells them everything. He does not raise his voice. He does not dramatize. He says the truth with the dignity that makes it bearable. The sisters exclaim, appalled, indignant, afraid for him, and then afraid for themselves. Beauty listens, holding the rose as gently as one holds a bird that has decided to trust a palm. "I will go," she says, not heroically, not loudly, simply, with the clarity of someone who never confuses kindness with noise. "No," the father says, the word a wall. "You are my joy. I will not send my joy into darkness." Beauty takes his hands. "You did not send me," she says softly. "I choose. This is different." The sisters protest, but they are not made of meanness, only habit. Even they grow quiet as Beauty continues. "We have been sheltered by this house. We have been fed by this garden. We have been warmed by this fire. I cannot let the one who built our days be taken because I asked for a flower." The father's eyes fill. He sees his late wife's gentleness alive in this child, grown into a courage that is not sharp, but steady. He wants to say no again. He wants to lock the door against the world. But he hears the shape of the truth. Love is not a chain. It is a hand, offered. "Give me one night to think," he pleads. Beauty nods. She places the rose in a bowl of water, as if it were a candle in a chapel. Night lies across the cottage like a quilt. The sisters pretend to sleep and do not. The father sits by the hearth and feeds the fire one small log at a time, so it will not feel alone. Beauty lies in her room and listens to the kind noises houses make when they are at rest. The old wood settling, the soft wind speaking at the eaves, the quiet mouse who thinks he is a king of crumbs. She dreams. In her dream, a corridor stretches forward lined with mirrors that do not show her face. They show moments, a table laid for two, a library where book spines glow faintly like embers, a winter garden that believes it can be spring, and then a garden again, but now the light is thin. By a fountain a figure lies very still, as if sleep has covered him completely and forgotten to leave a door. Beauty wakes before dawn, calm and certain, in a way that does not need explanation. She dresses without hurry. She braids her hair with firm, patient hands. She steps into the main room and finds her father already there, eyes rimmed in red and faith, waiting for the morning to give him permission to speak. She spares him. "I am going," she says gently, as one might tell the truth to a friend. Not to injure, but to relieve. "I will come to supper. I will return when I can. But for now, I'm going." The world outside has turned the color of pearls and ash. Snow lifts in small, thoughtful flurries. The horse waits at the gate, exactly where the beast said he would. Beauty kisses her sisters. She holds her father a long time. The embrace is quiet, the way the strongest things often are. Then she takes the rose from its bowl. She ties it carefully to her cloak, as if it were a compass. "Be brave," her father says, meaning himself as much as her. "I will be kind," Beauty answers, and somehow this sounds larger. She mounts the horse. He is warm under her, a steady life humming through muscle and heart. He steps forward. The path unrolls like ribbon. The forest does not loom, it accompanies. Branches framed in snow look down with the wisdom of old listeners. Birds nudge fluffed feathers and watch her pass like tiny feathered lanterns. Hours become a soft dream of trees and sky, and then the iron gate appears again, already open, already knowing. The avenue receives her without question. The castle stands with all its windows waking. The doors open. The hall welcomes. Fire climbs into the hearth with a gentle handspring. A voice, deep, careful, echoes through corridors not yet seen. "Welcome, Beauty." She does not startle. She has prepared her heart for the sound. She steps forward as if into a story she is not afraid to read. A table is set for two. A chair waits for her, patient as a promise. The rose at her cloak shivers once, as if it can smell a garden it remembers. Beauty takes her seat. Somewhere unseen, music begins very softly. It sounds like a low winter sun warming a window pane. And Night, standing outside with her quiet basket of sleep, draws closer to the glass and smiles. Chapter 2. The Castle of Whispering Halls. The first supper is lit by 100 quiet candles that do not drip. The flames stand very still, as if they too are listening. Beauty rests her hands on the table edge and feels the wood beneath her fingers, smooth, warm, oddly alive, as though it has learned kindness from long use. Across from her, the beast takes his seat with care, not to startle the chest, not to scrape the floor. Even his caution is large. He bows his massive head in a gesture that looks practiced and shy at the same time. "Thank you for coming," he says. The voice is deep, but it is not harsh. It fills the room the way low thunder does, near, but not a threat. "Oh, thank you for receiving me," Beauty answers. Her words are simple. She offers them as one offers bread, enough and honest. Plates appear without hands. A tureen leans and pours without spilling. A cup glides to her right hand and waits there, patient. Beauty feels the presence of many helpers, each moving with gentle precision. She cannot see them, but she can sense their happiness at having a guest. They eat. The soup tastes of root and herb and slow time. Bread breaks with a tender sigh. Steam rises from a dish of winter greens that somehow remember sunlight. Beauty murmurs her thanks after each bite, and the table seems pleased, as if the wood could hum. The beast watches without staring. He looks away when she looks up. He is trying to learn how to make a person comfortable. This is a difficult art when one has learned to expect fear. When the dishes float away, the beast folds his great hands on the table. "You will be mistress here," he says, not as a boast, but as an instruction he has rehearsed. "You may go where you wish. There is a library. There are gardens that keep their own seasons. There is music if you desire it. The only request I make is that you dine with me each evening. If you do not wish to speak, we will not speak. If you do, I will listen." Beauty nods. "I will dine with you." He exhales, a small release that in him is still a weather change. A pause. He looks at the candles, then back to her. "Beauty," he says, and her name in his mouth is careful. "Will you marry me?" The question has a shape she felt before it arrived. She does not flinch. She places her hand lightly on the table, palm down, as one would steady a paper in a draft. "No, beast," she says, kind and steady. "Not tonight." He inclines his head. "Thank you for answering." He does not argue. He does not plead. He sits with the answer as if it is a bowl set before him, and he will learn to taste it properly. When she rises, the hall opens for her. Doors unfasten, curtains breathe. Heat folds back from the hearth to make a comfortable path. The beast does not follow. "If you need anything," he says, "speak, and the house will hear." He stands as she leaves, not out of command, but out of respect. Beauty walks with curiosity and slow steps, as one walks through a museum of sleeping things. Portraits line the corridor, faces of women and men in clothes from other times, eyes painted with such care they look like thoughts caught on canvas. Some are joyful, some quiet, some proud, some tired in a way that looks older than their skin. She lingers. Each face seems ready to tell one story if someone would only ask. She does not know which questions to offer yet, so she gives them the soft gift of being seen. A clock somewhere strikes an hour with a bell made of honeyed brass. Beauty turns and finds herself before a pair of carved doors. They open to a library that seems to exhale when it sees her. Shelves climb to a ceiling painted the blue of very early morning. Ladders wait like friendly trees. A reading table stands by a window, already set with a blanket and a small dish of sugared nuts that look like winter stars. She touches a spine at random. The leather is warm, as if it has been held recently, as if the book remembers hands. When she draws it down, the cover opens with a sound like a soft ah. The first page is blank for an instant. Then words appear in neat lines, not written by any visible pen, but appearing as if the page had kept them and is ready to give them back. She breathes in. The scent is paper and dust and a hint of dried herb, like a sprig of thyme tucked into a pocket to keep the day calm. She reads until her eyes grow heavy. She reads about voyages across bays as smooth as glass. She reads about gardens planted in the shape of constellations. She reads about how to listen to a person who is not saying what they mean. When a yawn arrives, she does not fight it. She closes the book. It closes itself gently, as if to say, "We will continue when you return." A small door opens near the hearth, and a cup floats out, steaming with a drink that smells of cinnamon and milk. Beauty smiles. "Thank you," she whispers to the empty room. The room answers by becoming even more comfortable, a phenomenon she did not know was possible until now. Her chamber is at the turn of a curve. The bed is high and soft, the linens fine but not demanding, the the color of oats and cream. A fire dozes in the grate, breathing slow. On a low table, a vase holds a single rose, the shade of quiet thinking. She touches a petal and feels the cool of morning held there. She sleeps, and the castle does not watch her the way a guard watches. It watches the way a friend sits beside a sickbed, alert, not intrusive, ready, kind. Morning brings light that has filtered through trees and patience. The curtains lift just enough to let the day ask permission. Beauty stretches. The floor is warm beneath her bare feet, a courtesy the house has arranged. When she goes to the wardrobe, the doors open. Dresses wait there in colors that look like they used to be fruits, now turned to gentle cloth. She chooses a simple blue and finds it fits as though a seamstress measured not only her shoulders and waist, but her way of moving. Breakfast appears on the little table near the window. Porridge with a swirl of honey, like sunlight taught to draw a circle. A small plate of pears, a cup of tea that pours itself and stops just shy of spilling, as if it knows the rim's exact opinion of excess. She eats with gratitude. Between bites, she lets her gaze wander over the gardens below. They are a puzzle of seasons. Here, a shutter of winter where holly keeps its red promise. There, a square of spring where tulips laugh with their wide mouths. Beyond, a strip of summer where bees work a long lavender bed. And far off, a patch of autumn where a tree holds its last bright coins against the wind's advice. The garden is not a trick, it is a choice. The castle has decided no season has to leave entirely if what it brings is still needed. Beauty steps outside, and the day steps toward her. She follows a path of pale stones to a fountain whose water falls as if it were remembering a lullaby. Birds hop near her shoes, cocking their heads as if to say hello in the only language they possess. When she sits on a bench, the bench is exactly the right height for thinking. She explores the grounds in long, unhurried loops, a hedge maze that never truly intends to lose her, a rose walk where petals drift even when the air is still, a kitchen garden where herbs lean in to be picked as if they trust the hand that reaches for them. She pauses over a patch of wild strawberries, and two plump ones lift into her palm. They taste like the memory of summer's first warm evening. She finds a small, walled orchard in the back corner of the grounds, quieter than the rest. The air is different here, more private, like a whispered conversation. Trees grow with a patience that suggests they have decided to be old together. In the center, a weathered bench stands beneath a pear tree. On the bench, a book waits with a ribbon marking a place precisely halfway through. She opens it. The text is a diary, not written by anyone she knows. The handwriting is strong and a little slanted, a person with clear purpose and a tendency to lean into life. The entries are not confessions. They are gratitudes. One per day. Warm bread. A red leaf caught in a spider's web that looked like a jewel. The sound of a friend laughing into their sleeve. She reads until she feels full. She ties the ribbon. "Thank you," she says to no one, and to whoever left the book here. By the time the sun walks to its highest window, Beauty has learned the castle's first rule. It wants to be useful. It cannot stop being enchanted, but it can choose what kind of magic it practices. It practices the kind that makes life easier. It opens jars. It remembers the good chair is slightly too far from the fire and moves it closer. It keeps the corners of rugs from turning up like little frowns. It closes windows before the wind can get sharp. When the evening bell hums a low, contented note, Beauty returns to the hall to dine. The candles are lit. A soup lifts its lid and sends out a greeting. She sits, and the beast enters. No surprise in his steps, only a quiet regularity, like a person who has done this many times and is trying to do it a little better each time. They eat. She tells him she found the orchard. He says he is glad. His words are simple. He chooses each one as if it might break if he sets it down too firmly. He asks if she likes to read. She says yes. He says the library will bring any book she needs, even ones that have not been written yet. She smiles at the idea and does not press to know how that could be true. When the plates have been cleared by hands that are not seen, only felt in the neatness they leave behind, the beast looks at her, then at the table, then at her again. "Beauty," he says, "will you marry me?" "No, beast," she answers softly, "not tonight." He nods. It is easier this time. Not easy. Easier. Thank you. Days find their rhythm. Beauty maps the castle with her feet and with her listening. She learns the creak that means a stair needs oil and tells the house with a touch. She learns the threshold where the air always cools in mid-afternoon and brings a shawl to leave there on a hook so no one will startle at the chill. She learns the library's humor, how some books deliver the exact page she needs even when she thought she wanted a different one. She reads about bees and their small, orderly devotion. She reads about the physics of sound and understands a new respect for how the tapestries hush the hall. She reads fairy tales that end differently than the ones she raised herself on. In these, monsters set the table correctly. In these, the forest gives you back the thing you thought you lost, but it comes back as a lesson tied with twine. She begins to talk to the air without embarrassment. "Good morning," she says to the corridor, and it lights a little more as though it blushes. "That's enough tea," she murmurs to the pot when the cup is full, and the pot nods and settles. "Beautiful," she whispers, to a patch of violets, and they do not bloom more, not greedily, but they seem to relax into their already perfect bloom. The invisible servants answer with motions, with thoughtful arrangements, with the right thing in the right place at the right time. She senses joy in the work, a relief in having purpose. Sometimes a carefree laugh escapes a corner where no one is standing. Sometimes a handkerchief tucks itself into her sleeve when she seems almost but not quite about to cry, though she doesn't. Not exactly. The kind handkerchief goes in a pocket anyway. After supper each night, Beauty and the Beast walk. At first only in the great hall, from door to fireplace, and back again, like tides practicing being gentle. Then through the gallery, along portraits that become less strange, the more often she greets them. She mentions a painting she likes, a little boy holding a wooden horse near a pond, his hair sticking up as if the wind is his mother. The beast's ear tilts toward the canvas. He kept that toy too long, he says, almost amused, almost fond. He grew too quickly and too slowly at once. He does not say how he knows. Beauty does not ask. On the fourth evening of walking, he shows her the music room. It is full without being crowded. A harpsichord stands like a well-behaved cat. A viol waits on a stand the way a gentleman waits for a door to be opened. A small drum sleeps on a shelf, patient and round. Beauty lifts a flute. It is cool at first touch, then warm. She does not know how to play well, only to coax a few notes out of it. She tries. The flute forgives her and finds the notes she meant. It sends a simple line into the air, gentle and clear as a brook through small stones. The beast listens with his eyes half closed, a person letting their shoulders drop without meaning to. When she lowers the flute, he says, "Again." She plays again. A harmony appears in the room, not from a visible instrument, but from the room itself, as if the house likes to sing when invited. He never claps. He never says bravo. He says thank you, as if she handed him bread. That night, he asks her to marry him. That night, she says no. It has become a ritual, but it is not a game. It is a practice, the way people practice scales in hope that one day music will arrive. On a morning dim with soft rain, a mirror appears at the base of her bed, oval, framed in wood carved like vines. It stands quietly, not insisting to be noticed. When Beauty comes near, it brightens slightly, as if its surface prefers faces to ceilings. She knows what it is. She has read stories. She is careful. She places a hand on the frame. "May I?" she asks the room. The mirror answers by becoming clearer, which is as close as a mirror can come to nodding. "Show me my father," she whispers. The glass deepens like water. The cottage appears, sweet, small, steady in the rain. Her father sits at the table turning a cup in his hands, not to drink, but to feel the shape of something gentle. He is thinner. He is well enough, but he has made a habit of watching the door. Beauty touches the image with one fingertip and pulls her hand away before her longing can bruise her. The mirror returns to her own face, peaceful and a little red around the eyes. She tries again later. "Show me my sisters." One is staring into a window the way one stares into a pool, hoping a different face will rise from the bottom. The other is mending a hem with more intent than skill. They do not speak. They miss noise and fill the quiet with the sound of themselves not speaking. Beauty thanks the mirror for its honesty. She does not watch too long. She will not drown in worry while the day is asking to be lived. Later she carries the mirror to the library and covers it with a shawl, not to ignore it, but to remind herself she is here now, and here is asking for her attention. Beauty's questions, the ones she keeps politely in her pockets, begin to edge out. She notices the way certain corridors grow cooler near sundown and asks the house to bring a lamp earlier. It does. She wonders why the orchard is so private and why the diary feels like company. She asks no one, but the pages of a book later that evening talk about walled gardens and their purpose, to protect tender things until they know their own strength. At supper, she attempts a question spoken aloud. "Beast," she says gently, "how long have you lived here?" He looks at his hands. "A long time." He looks at her. "Longer than I have known how to count it without getting lost." "Are you alone?" she asks. "I have company," he answers, and the plates tremble once as if laughing at a small joke. "But yes." She waits. He is not ready to say more. She does not pry. She changes to a kinder subject. "The music room. The flute remembers which notes I meant to play. I have never met a patient instrument before." "Most instruments like to be played," he says. "They are generous. They forgive us when we are clumsy. The house helps." He glances at the ceiling, which pretends not to be listening. That night in the music room, she sets the flute aside and goes to the harpsichord. She presses one key, then another. The sound is crisp, neat, a room tidying itself. She plays a scale very slowly, the way a person speaks when they are learning a new language and want to honor it. The beast stands by the window and does not move, as if motion might scare the sounds into silence. When the last note falls into the soft carpet of the room, he says, "Beauty, will you?" "Not yet," she says, smiling this time, because the question has begun to feel like a shared object they set down between them each evening to see how it has changed shape. "But thank you for asking. Thank you for answering," he says, and there is almost something like warmth riding the words. The castle's magic learns her. It begins to move not just to impress, but to help her habits be easier. It sets 2 bookmarks in a book because it knows she sometimes reads the ending when she is anxious. It leaves a basket by the door because she likes to collect herbs. It places a small stool near every window because she prefers to look out while sitting. She, in turn, learns the castle. She straightens a rug that is always 1 inch crooked because the house is trying to be casual. She tells the mirror good morning and good night, as one would greet a quiet friend. She keeps a pocketful of crumbs for the sparrows who have learned they are welcome on the sill. In the long gallery are tapestries with scenes from another century. One shows a hunt, but not a triumphant one. Dogs at rest, antlers unclaimed, a prince sitting under a tree looking at his hands as if they were letters he cannot read. Beauty stands before it for a long while. The beast comes upon her there and stops 3 paces back as he always does, so she does not feel crowded. "I like the way the artist refused to finish the chase," she says, as if they changed their mind and decided to finish the person instead. The beast's gaze rests on the same woven prints. "He needed finishing," he murmurs, barely sound. She looks at him, at the space he takes and the care with which he takes it. She can feel a story at the edge of hearing, like a distant bell behind fog. She does not push the fog away. Fog has its own dignity. It lifts when it is ready. "Would you like to see the winter garden?" he asks, and the question is so modest, like offering to show someone a drawer where you keep your favorite buttons, that she nods. They cross a courtyard. The air changes. The fountain here throws up taller water, as if colder air encourages braver arcs. The beds are tucked under straw, but along the paths grow roses, each plant wearing its own season like a personality. Some hold tight green fists. Some offer buds that look like thought before speech. Some open wide even in the chill, certain of their purpose. Snow sits on a few leaves like lace thrown over a shoulder. Beauty bends. She inhales a bloom that smells like a memory she cannot place. She blinks. Water pricks at her eyes. "Forgive me," she says, laughing at herself. "They make me feel more." "They are good at that," the beast says. He is not looking at the roses. He is watching her discover that roses are not just roses. "Thank you for letting me be here," she says, straightening. "I think, if I am honest, I expected to be afraid forever." "Thank you for not being," he says, and the winter garden seems to approve, a wind passing through like a friendly dog. One afternoon, Beauty finds a small door she has somehow missed. It is plain, painted a soft brown, almost the color of the wall that holds it. She would have walked by again, but the door opens the tiniest bit, like a wink. Inside is a room half the size of her bedchamber and twice as dear. It is filled with things made by hands, knitted scarves with a dropped stitch or 2, carved animals whose legs are sometimes different lengths, a quilt of squares cut from dresses that must have seen dances. On a shelf, a row of clay cups nearly identical, each with one small mistake that makes it unique. A thumb print, a lip too thick, a glaze that ran. A sign hangs above the shelf in neat paint. Practice room. Beauty stands in the doorway and feels a sudden rush of affection for whoever decided to keep their errors, to put them together in one place so they could be seen as progress instead of proof that a person is not enough. She steps inside. A basket of yarn scoots toward her feet, asking to be touched. She sits and tries to knit a single line. The needles are patient teachers. The yarn is forgiving. She makes a narrow piece of nothing that curls on itself. It is lovely. She adds it to a small pile of similar scraps, ribbons of learning. When she leaves, someone hangs her trial piece on a small peg near the door with a tag that reads, "Beauty, Day 7. She blushes and smiles and feels unexpectedly at home. That night, when the question comes, "Beauty, will you marry me?" she hears it differently, not as pressure, not as a test, as a person standing in a practice room holding out the thing they have made that day and asking if she would like to share it. She still says no. Not tonight, but her voice is grateful. "Thank you," he says, and his voice is braver. They do not walk after supper. He leads her to a different chamber, a room with tall windows and a floor that looks like it was polished by people who loved the work. In the center stands a mirror taller than a door, framed in wood so dark it seems almost to drink the light. "This one does more," he says, and steps back. Beauty steps forward. Her reflection looks back, familiar and softer, as if the glass has edited out every unkind thought she has ever had about herself without removing a single freckle. She lifts a hand. The mirror lifts a memory. She sees herself as a child learning to stir a pot without sloshing. She sees her father laughing with her mother at nothing. She sees the day the merchant's fortunes fell, and she sees Beauty placing her hands on the table and saying, "We will be all right," and making it true by deciding it. She draws a breath. "It shows the best of things," she says. "It shows the true of things," the beast answers. "Sometimes that is the same." She looks at him as if the mirror had turned a page, and there he was, in a chapter she had not known she was reading. "Thank you," she murmurs. She means the mirror. She means the room. She means the chance to see herself as more than the sum of what she has done. "You are welcome," he replies. He means the house. He means himself. He means the possibility that a person might change and still be themselves. Rain lifts. Sun returns. The days keep stepping forward hand in hand, without hurry. Beauty writes small notes and tucks them in unusual places for the invisible servants to find. The tea was perfect today. The rug in the blue room no longer frowns. "Thank you for the way the window opened before I asked." In return, notes appear for her, pinned to the lace at her dressing table, woven into the border of a napkin, pressed into a book like a leaf. "We like your footsteps. The violets miss you when you do not walk their way. The music room says you are getting better." She laughs out loud in the library, and the stacks lean in, pleased to be nearby. She begins to read to the beast after supper. Not every night, not as a duty, because sometimes words are easier to share when they are traveling in a story. She chooses chapters of simple wisdom and adventure without bragging. He listens with the stillness of someone trying not to disturb a sleeping bird. When she pauses, he waits the length of a sentence before asking, "More?" He never interrupts. He never says, "I know." He always says, "Thank you," when the chapter ends. One evening she chooses a book of myths and finds one about a prince who thought he could measure his worth by the number of things that bent to him. She skips it. She chooses another, about a woman who planted a tree in winter and trusted it to find spring. She reads that one twice. The beast does not ask why she skipped. He knows the taste of some stories. A person does not need to drink from every cup to know what is in it. If there is a forbidden place in the castle, Beauty has not been told. She prefers it that way. She prefers doors that open at exactly the rate her courage does. There are rooms she has not yet entered because she is not ready to see what they hold. The house respects that. It does not woo with spectacle. It persuades with rightness. In time, she stumbles upon a small chapel, not a grand one with gold and rules, a room with a bench and a window cut low enough for a child to see out. The window looks onto a patch of the garden where roses curve around a stone in the shape of a sleeping name. Beauty sits, and the quiet is companionable, like a cat that has chosen your lap but will not mind if you shift. She does not pray with words. She offers her day and lets the room hold it for a while. On the way back, she meets the beast in the corridor. He is carrying nothing and everything. Being large, he always seems to carry a little of the air in front of him. He nods toward the direction she came from. "Do you like that room?" he asks. "Yes," she says. "It feels gentle." "It remembers good things," he answers, and his voice lowers on the word remembers, as if memory is a place he does not visit alone. "Would you like to walk?" she asks. "Yes," he says. And they do, past the winter garden, past the music room that keeps its own heartbeat, past a door that opens a careful inch and then thinks better of it. On a landing, she stops to look out a long window. Snow has fallen only on one strip of lawn, so that the ground appears to be wearing a sash of white. "It looks like a page turned," she says. "Winter is just under the corner of autumn." The beast studies the sash. "I like the way you see," he says, as if giving her a medal she cannot lose. She does not answer. She lets the compliment land, as if it were a bird who chose to rest on her shoulder, and will leave if she notices too much. That night at supper, he asks as always, "Beauty, will you marry me?" She meets his gaze. "Not tonight," she says, and adds, "I am still learning the house." He nods, as if this is the most reasonable answer in the world. "Would you like to learn me?" he asks, and then looks immediately as if he wishes to hide under the table for having dared. "Yes," she says. He looks up. "What would you like to know?" She thinks. She does not say the curse, or the past, or the rule that keeps the servants unseen. She says, "What is your favorite hour?" He blinks. The question wanders around the room, collecting little pieces of light so it can bring them back to him. He finally answers, "The hour before dawn. It feels like the house is thinking. Everything is possible because nothing has been decided yet." She smiles. "Mine too." They sit with this small shared thing, as if it were a fire. Days turn like pages. Beauty learns where the floor warms first in the morning. She learns the song the kettle prefers. She learns the path a robin takes from the holly to the hedge and back again every day at noon. She learns which chairs forgive a person who fidgets and which do not. She learns the beast's careful humor. He does not tell jokes. He rescues them. When she drops a word and cannot find it, he offers the right one after the right pause. When he steps on a rug that curls, he says, "Pardon me," to the rug, and the rug uncurls, mollified. When a cup lands on the table a little too fast, he says, "Eager," and the cup settles down, praised instead of scolded. She learns his silences. A heavy one when he is remembering something that does not fit in his mouth. A smaller one when he is deciding if a question is allowed. A patient one when she reads and he is trying not to sigh, so the words can fold themselves properly into the air. She learns her own silences too. The one that means she misses her father. The one that means this minute is too beautiful to risk with speech. The one that means she has begun to care a great deal for the way this being across the table tries and tries again, without asking for applause. One evening, the mirror brings her the cottage without even being asked. Her father is in bed, a shawl over his legs, though the fire burns well. He is not ill in a danger way. He is lonely in a way that makes his hands stroke the edge of the blanket for company. Beauty rests her forehead against the cool glass. The beast finds her like that and stops in the doorway so the floor will not reveal his arrival. "I miss them," she says, without turning. "Missing is its own weather." "Yes," he says. "I know that season." She straightens. Could I see him for a little while if I promise to return?" The room listens. The mirror holds its breath. The house waits without fidgeting. The beast's answer is slow, not because it is reluctant, but because he is measuring each word so the promise will fit correctly. "Yes, if you promise to return in 7 days. If you break the promise, I will die." He says it without drama. He says it like the weather report. If the clouds do not break, the field will flood. Beauty turns. The words are heavy in the air, but they are not stones. They are seeds. They may bloom into something kinder. "I promise," she says. It is not a flourish. It is a line drawn steady. "I will return in 7 days." He bows, and the bow contains 100 thoughts that will not be spoken tonight. He gives her a small ring. "This will know the way," he says. "When you turn it and wish to be home again, it will bring you." "Thank you," she says, and the words are not enough. She adds, "I mean it." "I know," he answers, and that is enough. They eat supper. They do not walk. They sit a while longer than usual after the plates vanish, saying little, listening to the house breathe, grateful and afraid, and underneath both, trusting. When the hour comes, she stands. "I will return in 7 days, she says again. He nods. "I will be here," he says, as if there is anywhere else he could possibly go. She turns the ring. The room tilts like a bow. The air gathers itself like a cat preparing to leap. The castle whispers goodnight through every corridor, in every hinge and tapestry fold. In the instant before the ribbon of magic wraps her, Beauty looks at the beast and sees him not as a silhouette or a collection of disproportions. She sees a person who has been practicing hope in private for a long time. The world folds. The smell of home appears. Smoke, bread, old wood, the wool of a blanket that has outlived its first purpose and is happiest now in this ordinary one. The cottage holds her. Her father says her name as if it had been asleep on his tongue and has now woken. Her sisters cry and laugh and make a mess of their faces and hug her in a way they have never managed before, their arms around her as if they finally learned to be brave where it matters. Beauty rests and cares and cooks and mends and listens and rearranges the furniture by 1 inch and finds the place where the light is kindest for her father's chair. She tells them little of the castle because the words would sound like boasting. She tells them much of quiet things, the way the frost draws patterns on the window like handwriting, the relief of a warm bowl placed in cold hands. The fact that their garden will wake again and again, no matter what people decide. The days are both long and small. They are full. They walk her like a child in a pram, back and forth, while she memorizes home so she can carry it with her. On the 7th day, she rises before dawn. She knows the color of that hour now. She does not need a candle. She ties on her cloak. She kisses her sister's sleeping hair. She presses her lips to her father's forehead and lets one tear fall there, a blessing and a promise. She turns the ring and wishes to be where she said she would be. The cottage loosens its hold with love. The road does not need to be traveled. Distance is not consulted. The air folds again, and she is in the hall where a table waits for supper that has not yet been cooked. She listens. The house is not breathing. It is holding its breath. "Beast," she calls, softly at first, then less softly. No answer. She runs, and the castle runs with her, opening doors before she reaches them, tilting floors to hasten her steps, bringing light in front of her like a lantern running ahead down a dark path. "Beast!" she calls again. And the name is a rope she throws into the winter garden, into the music room, into the chapel, into the practice room. The winter garden answers, windless and still, roses with their faces lifted as if expecting rain that never arrives. She finds him by the fountain as she dreamed long ago, as if the dream were a map, as if the map had been folded and is now open. He lies very still. His breath is the kind of breath a person makes when they are not sure whether it is allowed anymore. Beauty kneels. She takes his great hand in both of hers, small and warm and certain. "I am here," she says. "I kept my promise." She puts her head against his chest and feels for the drum. It is faint, but it is there. "Please," she whispers to the house, to the roses, to the air. "Please." A petal, loosened by nothing she can see, drifts down and rests on the beast's paw, like a small red yes. Beauty raises her head. "Beast," she says, and the word is a whole story spoken in one breath. "I came back." His eyes open the smallest amount. They look not at the sky or the fountain or the rose that has just said yes. They look at her. He tries to speak and does not waste it on apology. He uses it for gratitude. "Thank you," he says, so quietly she almost has to become a person who listens like a house to hear it. She bends and presses her lips to his brow. "Live," she says, not as a command, but as permission. The winter garden holds steady. The fountain remembers how to fall. The roses, every one, turn infinitesimally toward the two figures at their heart, as if the entire geometry of the place has been waiting to align. Night begins to lower herself gently over the walls, bringing her basket of sleep, ready to set it down. But the story is not finished speaking yet. Chapter 3. The Garden of Truth and the Promise. Before the winter garden held its breath, there were 7 days like pearls on a thread. Day 1 was the sound of a latch lifting and a father saying her name as if it were a flame brought back from a long dark room. Beauty set her bundle down and let the house recognize her by the way she touched the table, 3 fingers first, a small circular rub, as if greeting an old friend. The kettle remembered its favorite whistle. The window remembered which hinge complained and offered fewer complaints. Their cottage, unchanged, felt newly right because she was inside it again, carrying the calm of a castle that understood how to listen. She told them little and everything, little of enchantments, everything of kindness, the way a book could feel warm in your hands when the words were right. The way porridge could taste like patience. The way doors could open exactly in time with your steps when you were brave enough to keep walking. Her father watched her face more than her mouth, realizing his daughter had found a place where she was not just kept, but welcomed. He took a steadier breath. His hands stopped apologizing to the cup they held. Day 2 was mending and rearranging by inches. She set the chair so morning found it without glare. She turned the rug so its small pattern agreed with the floorboard's longer thought. She sorted buttons, each click a prayer for ordinary miracles. The sisters, startled by the way home grew softer around her, imitated what they saw without quite knowing they were imitating. One started a stew early so it could become the kind of stew that teaches waiting. The other folded the washing slowly enough that the cloth could remember it once belonged to seed and rain. When they spoke of dresses and ribbons, their words arrived thinner than before, like threads that had learned not to tangle. Jealousy tried to rise and sat back down, tired of itself. Day 3 was the market and its small, brave noises. Beauty walked with her father to trade eggs for salt. People were gentle with their eyes. They had heard something about a castle and a creature and a choice. Gossip, which loves sharp teeth, licked its lips and then, finding none, grew kinder too. A baker wrapped the crusty end of a loaf in paper and slipped it to Beauty with a wink. For the road, she said, not asking when or where, trusting that every story has more roads than people admit. That night, Beauty slept and dreamed the kind of dream that doesn't frighten. It instructs. A corridor full of mirrors returned, each showing not her face, but her promise. One showed a clock at the soft hour before dawn. Another showed a ring glinting like a moon caught in a small silver pond. Another showed a garden where roses did not move, even though the air was breathing. When she woke, the ring on her finger was cool and firm. The rose she had brought home from the castle, kept like a flame in a jar of water by her bed, held its perfect shape, but paled infinitesimally at the edge, as if a whisper had touched it. Day 4 was talking without fear, and silence without hurt. Beauty told her father how the castle knew how to be useful and did not show off about it. He told her how loneliness can be a room with too many chairs. They agreed to sit closer. The sisters watched, curious, disarmed, and fetched kindling without being asked, which in some families is as dramatic as saving a life. Beauty taught one sister to stir a pot until the smell turns from wet to ready. She taught the other to stitch with thread that doesn't match exactly, so the mend admits itself and still lifts its chin. If there was plotting, it failed to bloom. Jealousy tried again to lay out a plan like a dress pattern. Delay Beauty with this, distract her with that, ask for this tiny favor and then another. Let 7 days become 8, become 9, and perhaps the beast would. The sentence refused to finish itself out loud. The sisters realized that plans built on someone else's breaking never hold. They put the paper away. They put the kettle on. It felt better to feed the person you love than to starve the person you worry about. Day 5 was the slow blue rain that finds every leak in a roof and every truth in a home. Beauty brewed a tea of lemon balm and told stories that were not hers and yet were tales from old books about people who learned to name their fear and then call it by a smaller name the next day. The sisters napped and woke nicer. The father dozed in his chair, one hand on the arm as if holding hands with a friend. Beauty sat by the window and looked into the rain and felt the castle in her bones. The long halls that made space for her, the music room that forgave every wrong note, the winter garden that stood up without pretending not to shiver. The ring warmed and cooled with no pattern she could notice. Not hot, never hot, but warm, like a thought rising toward speech. That night she dreamed again, not warning now but remembrance, a fountain, a stillness, the sort of quiet that is not peace but absence. She woke with a single word in her mouth, soon. Day 6 was practical love. Beauty wrote a list titled, "For When I Am Gone Again." On it, add a log to the fire before the kettle sings. It keeps the kettle humble. Walk twice around the garden when you are sad. The second lap is always kinder. Do not worry the window latch. It worries back. She tucked the list in the drawer where the wooden spoons live, because wooden spoons are honest and like to be near good instruction. Her father watched her writing and did not ask, "Must you?" He asked, "How can I make the 7th day easier for you?" She kissed his cheek and smiled the kind of smile that keeps men from adding heroics to love. "Have my cloak ready," she said, "and say my mother's name." He did. The room felt stronger. That evening the sisters combed Beauty's hair all the way to the ends, the way kindness combs a story until the tangles are just memories of knots. They tied a ribbon not for show, but to be found later by her fingers when she needed reminding that people can learn. Before sleep, Beauty placed the castle rose on the sill and whispered, "Hold." The petal edges, for the first time, failed to answer with gloss. Nothing drooped, nothing dramatic, just the tiniest surrender of red toward dusk. Day 7 arrived without trumpet. Beauty rose before dawn, her favorite hour, his favorite hour, and the room seemed to step aside to let her pass. She dressed as if the air could bruise. She tucked the list under the spoons. She kissed her sisters awake and did not mind their sudden tears. They cried not as before for themselves, but for her, which is a better kind of crying. She held her father a long time. He whispered all the blessings he knew, and when he ran out, he said, "Come back," which is the simplest blessing and the truest command. She stood in the doorway a moment. Night was still folded over the garden, but the edge of morning had a finger under it, ready to lift. Beauty turned the ring and said nothing out loud. The ring did not need the map of her voice, only the steady hand of her promise. The cottage gave one last beloved creak. The air folded. The world with its distances confessed that distance is a habit, not a law. Beauty arrived in the great hall to the exact sound of a plate finding its place, except the plate did not find it. It hovered a breath too long and then lowered, uncertain, as if the hand that guided it had lost the habit of trust. "Beast," she called softly, like a question asked at a sickbed. The house did not breathe. That was answer enough. She ran. The rugs leapt aside like grateful helpers. Doors flung themselves open without banging. Windows offered light. The library stilled its pages so they would not rustle like panic. The chapel kept its gentle, but it opened its window wider to let prayer through. The winter garden had become a room made of pause, not dead, not empty, paused, the way a heart pauses when a name is spoken in a crowd. Beauty found him by the fountain as the dream had instructed, the instruction no person wishes to obey. He was not gone, but he was very near the place where going does not require a door. She knelt. She took his hand. She spoke the plain words that hold the world to its better shape. "I am here. I came back. I promised. I am here." The garden listened, the way earth listens when rain at last arrives. She rested her forehead against his rough brow, the way one rests one's head against a tree that has outlived storms. "Live," she whispered, not command, not plea, permission. A rose loosened one petal and placed it on his hand like an oath remembered. Night began to lay her basket of sleep on the wall. The fountain remembered falling. The house, all its corridors and corners, leaned closer without moving. And the story, like a held breath, waited for the next word. Chapter 4. The Beast's Heart and the Breaking of the Spell. It is a simple word, the one that changes the air. Yes. Not shouted, not even spoken first. It is born inside Beauty when she realizes that whatever her life becomes, it must include the care of this being, this patient listener, this student of gentleness, this large creature who asks small and thanks often. Love does not arrive like lightning here. It arrives like a lamp set down on a table that has been waiting for light, and everyone in the room recognizes what the room was meant for. She does say it then, out loud, so the garden can carry it on its green nerves. Yes, Beast. Yes, to dinner and music and walking. Yes, to trying and trying again. Yes, to learning your favorite hour and making it mine. Yes, to the person you have practiced becoming. Yes, to staying. Yes, to home, if home is where we are kind. Yes. She does not dress it up in more important words. Love is already important. He hears it. Even from that place near leaving, he hears it. In his eyes, which had been fixed on a far field no person can reach, a near light returns, one candle at a time. He tries to speak and fails. He tries again and succeeds at the smallest thing. Her name. Beauty. Yes, she breathes, answering his breath with her own. She puts her hand over his heart. It is there. It is unpersuaded by old habits. It is a door that refuses to shut while footsteps are still on the threshold. Will you marry me? He asks, but not as before. It is not a ritual now, not a defended hope. It is a hand extended by a person who knows the answer and knows, too, that saying it matters. Yes, she answers, and the word makes a shape around them that fits. The world changes its mind. Not with thunder, not with spectacle first with grammar. The garden shifts from was to is. The fountain's water becomes a sentence that finishes itself. The winter air warms exactly one coat's worth. The roses straighten, not taller, just truer. The house takes a breath, its first breath since she left, and releases it with relief audible in hinges, in plaster, in tapestries that drop their small, tired sag. Light arrives where it was least expected, under things, under the lip of the fountain, under the rim of the stone path, under the line of shadow at the base of the wall. It rises up like laughter that broke free from under a heavy blanket. Beauty looks down as the light collects around the beast, like morning deciding on a day. He changes. It is not an explosion. It is not a vanishing. It is the most respectful kind of magic, transformation that keeps the truth and removes the lie. The fur that taught him solitude softens into hair that will learn the habit of wind. The horns that taught him to be careful of doorways become the dark curl of a brow that will be careful of words. The great paws that learn to set cups down gently become hands that will keep that lesson. The eyes remain themselves, lamps that have watched long corridors and stayed lit. Where the beast lay, a man opens his eyes and finds the world level with his gaze again. He looks at his hands as one reads a sentence written by a friend after a long separation. He sits, not suddenly, not rashly, and the change does not wobble, because it is not a trick. It is truth relieved of punishment. Beauty does not gasp at beauty. She does not need to. What has changed is not his worth. It is his shape. She studies his face and finds the person she already knew. Patience at the corners, a careful mouth, a good weight to the quiet between words. She smiles because a story kept its promise to become kinder. He puts his hand on the stone to steady himself. He stands. He almost bows and then remembers they have already bowed enough for a lifetime. He speaks, voice different in timbre, but not in care. "Thank you," he says, the first words of a free man. He laughs a little, surprised by the way laughter feels when it has more room in the chest. Then he stops laughing because joy does not need to shout to be believed. The house, having taken its first breath, begins to work softly, swiftly, like a trained company returning to their posts after the intermission notice is removed from the stage door. Windows blink clean, fireplaces pull on their good smoke. The gallery's portraits soften. In a rush that is not a rush, figures appear where nothing stood. People, the invisible hands that set cups and eased chairs 1,000 times, become hands visible again, calloused by work they continued to love, even when no one could see them. Their first act is not to cheer. It is to check the guests, Her Majesty, no, Beauty, and their prince. They bring blankets to the garden because love has not unlearned practicality. "Welcome back, your," one begins, and the prince lifts a hand, a gentle amendment. "Welcome home," he says instead, and the language corrects itself. The head of the household, who had been a candelabrum of exacting taste and will spend the rest of his life not quite certain whether the candles are lit properly, wipes his eyes. The seamstress, who used to be a wardrobe with opinions, presses a hand to her heart and decides it will be an honor to argue softly with Beauty about sleeve lengths for years. The music room clears its throat and reintroduces itself as a harper with a sly humor. The prince turns to Beauty. There is no rehearsal for this. They do not need one. "Would you like to walk?" he asks, and the large word "always" is standing in the wings of his voice. "Yes," she says, "but first, your winter garden." They stand together where he had almost left alone. The fountain spray turns diamond in air, the temperature of promise. Between them, without announcement, a new rose opens. It is the red of a word said correctly for the first time. Beauty touches its petal with the back of one finger, the way one greets a newborn, tenderly, astonished, careful not to smudge the miracle with hurry. He looks at her looking, and in his eyes there is the grateful fatigue of a man who has put down a burden that once taught him posture, but never taught him peace. "I was wrong," he says, almost to himself. "I thought being feared was safer than being known." He tilts his head, a habit his other form learned, and his true form keeps. "Being known is harder," he admits. "Better and harder." She nods. "Practice room," she says, and the two words contain the entire castle and also the path forward. They smile because even serious people are allowed to be delighted by a shared metaphor. The household, freshly human and freshly busy, negotiates the day around them. Quiet, instant competence, as if a conductor lifted a baton midway through a movement and the orchestra found itself on the same bar without panic. Meals begin to happen. Sheets find beds. Lost things return to their shelves like prodigals who never need be scolded. Someone remembers to put a stool near the tall library window, because Beauty likes to sit there. Someone else remembers to oil the hinge of the chapel's door, so the quiet inside is not jostled. They walk inside first, so he can show her the places that had been shaped by enchantment and are now shaped by choice. The long gallery is brighter, the portrait's eyes less worried. The practice room is there still, untouched and perfect, every mistake pinned like a badge, proof that people kept trying when no one clapped. Beauty's scrap, Beauty, Day 7, hangs in its place. She touches it and laughs for the joy of continuity. "Keep it," the prince says. "No," she answers, "I want it here." She glances at him. for other hands to be brave beside. He nods, understanding that some trophies do not belong on mantles. They belong where other people can gather courage from them. They pass the music room. It is now a human place, making human sounds. A harp, a flute, the quiet thrum of a low drum. The harper looks up, reads the room's pulse, and plays what is needed, not triumph, not lullaby. Something between. Recovery. They step into the library, and Beauty's breath does the thing it did the first time, but deeper now, because now the shelves are not simply abundant. They are also companions. The librarian, who used to be a ladder that rolled on rails and had strong opinions about readers who did not put things back properly, bows and then, catching himself, grins. "Forgive me, miss. Habit." He gestures. New arrivals came while the house slept. Stories do that. Beauty runs her fingers along spines and feels the books hum like cats who know which lap they prefer. "We will read to each other," she says, and the librarian says, "Yes," as if the library has been waiting to hear that sentence spoken aloud since it was built. At last they stand in the great hall again, and the prince, still uncertain in this new scale of himself, still learning where to rest his hands, still building the new habit of not apologizing for occupying space, turns to her with that familiar care, held now in a body that wears it comfortably. "Beauty," he says, "would you like to see your father?" "Yes," she says, and the word is not a leaving. It is a circle closing and opening at once. She glances at him, remembering that leaving used to be loss in this house. I promised to bring news back to him. I promised him I would come home safe. And now I am even safer than I knew. "You will return," he says. Not a question, not a test, because love that does not trust is still studying. And I will be here. She takes his hand. It is warm and strange and known. "I will return," she says. "Tomorrow, the day after. Whatever the right day is called when people have learned to measure time with kindness instead of clocks." He smiles, and the smile is a man's and the beast's at once, careful, grateful, a little shy of how much joy is now legal to show. "Then go," he says, and the house, hearing the whole of that sentence, begins to assemble what a good departure requires. A cloak that holds off wind without swagger, a horse who does not shy at gratitude, provisions that taste of home more than brag. Servants, friends, bring a small basket with the right amount of bread, the end piece because it is best, a pot of honey because sweetness is not weakness, and a wrapped wedge of cheese because sturdiness should be celebrated. Someone tucks in a tiny vial of rosewater. Someone else tucks in a sprig of thyme. The head of the household tucks in a folded napkin and says, "For grace," and means the kind two people say before a meal, and the kind a person tries to show when life trips them. Before she goes, Beauty asks to visit one room more, the chapel with the low window. They kneel, awkward and perfect, and let the quiet hold them. No vows are spoken there. Vows have been spoken already. They are not pious as much as grateful. When they stand, the prince kisses the doorway on impulse, the way a child might kiss a beloved stone, and looks embarrassed until Beauty does the same and removes the loneliness from his gesture. In the winter garden once more they pause at the fountain. The new rose, the one that opened when yes was said, has deepened by a shade, as if color follows consent. Beauty fastens a ribbon to the slender stem, not to bind it, but to remember it. She tugs the tie softly. The rose nods. "Hold," she whispers, and the rose does. "Until you return," the prince says. "Until I return," she echoes, and the echo belongs to the house now, not to loss. She turns the ring, not the old desperate turn of parting, but the smooth half-turn of visiting, looks back to see him where she left him, looking as if he has mastered the art of standing still without being left behind. And she is gone, only for a breath, only for the exact amount of time it takes to bring a father's hands back to hope. The cottage has never been grand, but that morning it learns a new word. Radiant. Beauty appears, and the room rearranges itself around her without moving. Her father stands before his chair, the way a person stands when a verdict is about to be read, and the judge is someone they trust. He sees her face and does not bother with questions. Answers arrive with her like daylight. She tells them more than before and less, because some joy is better shown than said. He is kind, she says, and it is the largest sentence she knows. He is free, she says, and the house bows its rafters in relief. We love each other, she says, and her sisters, who have learned a thing or two in 7 days, do not fall into envy. They fall into happiness, which is a bigger, quieter thing. Her father laughs and coughs and cries and sits and stands in no particular order. He insists on putting on his best coat, which is not very fine and is therefore more beautiful, and walking as far as the gate and back holding her arm. "Tell me everything," he says. And she does, about the practice room and the rose that opened at the exact right second, about the librarian who used to be a ladder and now wears spectacles just because he always wanted to, about a house that learned how to be useful and then learned how to be happy. "Will we meet him?" her eldest sister asks, and she is not asking for gossip. She is asking to be worthy of the meeting. "Yes," Beauty says, "soon." The other sister fetches the good cup and puts it before Beauty without comment. The way people who have become kinder hide their kindness in actions, so it does not embarrass the newness of it. They eat together. Bread with the kind of crisp that forgives teeth, cheese that admits its own salt, apples that remember their blossom days. They talk about where to plant peas when the ground softens. They talk about mending the fence with less complaint. They plan a visit to the widow down the lane, because joy unshared grows tight at the seams. Beauty stays long enough for morning to become afternoon in a way that asks no one to hurry. Then she stands. "I promise to return," she says, and promises are the lines this story writes with. "Will you come with me?" she asks her father. He looks at the room, at the fields, at the 2 women who have learned how to stir a pot until the smell turns from wet to ready. "Tomorrow," he says, the sensibility of someone who knows what mending a fence feels like in the hands. "I will come tomorrow. Today I will learn how to be patient in a new direction." She kisses them all. She steps into the small blue weather between house and road. She turns the ring. The cottage leans forward, not to pull her back, but to send her well. The world folds obediently. Distance bows to love's schedule. She arrives in the inner court where the sun makes squares on the flagstones. The prince is exactly where he promised to be, near the chapel, near the winter garden, near the place where a person who has been forgiven might choose to stand. "Welcome home," he says, and she answers, "I brought a yes back with me too. They will come tomorrow." "Then we have a day between," he says, "for practice." And because they are who they are, they fill that day not with fanfare, but with simple rehearsals for life. Reading on the same page without racing, walking at a speed that suits both sets of knees. Choosing plates for supper not because they match, but because they feel right in the hand. Evening comes. Candles refuse to drip. The music room plays what it knows about after. The house, which has learned how to be useful and happy, and now adds wholly to its list, without announcing the promotion, lowers the light gently over two people who have learned to keep promises, and learn that some promises break curses the way bread breaks hunger. Tomorrow we'll have guests and laughter, and the bright noise of reunion. Tonight belongs to the garden, the chapel, the library, the practice room, and two voices reading quietly to each other until the sentences run out of edges and become sleep. Chapter 5. The Wedding and the Night of Roses. Morning arrives on quiet feet, the way joy prefers to travel. It pauses at the threshold of the chapel with the low window, brushes the winter garden with a sleeve lined in gold, and then makes its way to the inner court, where the prince waits with the precise patience they have both learned, patience that is not empty, but full of listening. He is dressed simply. The house had offered splendor, brocade that remembered coronations, velvet that could make a person forget to breathe. But he chose cloth like the sky before dawn, soft, true, unboastful. Beauty steps out from the corridor that still smells faintly of beeswax and books. Her dress is the color of the inside of a shell, a quiet brightness. The seamstress, once a wardrobe, has sewn into the hem a hidden row of hand stitches no one will notice, but which hold a small prayer in every loop. Keep, keep, keep. Good morning, Beauty says, as if this morning were any other and also the only one. Good morning, he answers, and the house, which now knows how to be useful, happy, and holy, lifts the light a fraction, just enough to honor the greeting. There is much to do and nothing to rush. Her father and sisters will arrive before noon. The road from the cottage is short for days and long for hearts. The staff, friends, move in that noiseless flurry of true readiness. The head of the household confirms that kettle and candle and corridor are all thinking in the same direction. The harper tests 3 strings and nods when they say yes. The librarian places on a side table a worn book of blessings that has seen many hands and never once closed on a cruel sentence. Someone remembers to set a stool near the chapel window for the old, in case standing becomes too much when joy stands up in a person's chest and insists on being seen. Beauty and the prince take breakfast in the library. They do not eat much. They are not fasting. They are being fed by something that does not require plates. Between sips of tea, they practice the words they want to say today, then laugh and stop practicing because their words always behave better when they are allowed to arrive the natural way, like birds, not like soldiers. Shall we go to the gate? He asks. Let's go to the gate, she says, and the two of them walk through the long gallery, past the tapestries that have resolved their old worry into patience. They pass the practice room. Beauty stops, just long enough to touch the scrap that reads Beauty Day 7. Leave it, she tells the room again, and the room replies with a small, contented exhale that could be mistaken for the settling of shelves, but is in fact the sound of a house proud of its people. The gate is not grand. It has learned that the best kind of welcome does not need to shine. Snow lies along the drive in friendly cushions. The trees bow as if they have rehearsed, which of course they have. The wind has been teaching them for years. In the distance, 2 figures and a third between them. The horse knows the way to kind faces. Beauty waves once, and the wave feels like a bell rung only for joy. Her father lifts his free hand and answers with a wave that wobbles because it has been asked to carry more happiness than a hand can usually carry. The sisters Hurry, an elegant hurry, a careful hurry, a hurry that does not knock the world over on its way to love. Then they are together, and the word together stops being a wish and becomes a simple description. The prince bows, not to impress, but to say thank you with his whole height. The father, who once measured men by their trades, and now measures them by the way a room softens when they enter it, looks at the prince and nods some slow, private nod that means, "I see the work you did when no one clapped." "Welcome," the prince says. "Home," Beauty adds, because she has learned that the best sentences often need only one more word to be complete. They pass under the gate to a place that no longer remembers fear as a habit. The head of the household meets them with a tray that holds cups of hot, clear broth, simple, savory, the sort of welcome that makes the stomach and the heart agree. The seamstress wipes her eyes on the corner of her apron and presents Beauty's sisters each with a ribbon. "Not because you need adorning," she says, "because today is a day for tying things to other things, hands to hands, lives to lives. We practice with bows." The sisters glance at Beauty, half apologizing for all the days when their bows tied only to themselves. She takes their hands, one in each of hers, and squeezes so firmly and so gently that the past sits down and the present stands up. They tour what needs touring. The library greets the father with a chair that suits men who have known sea winds and winters. He sits, his hat in his lap, and strokes the hat brim as if it were a small animal he is reassuring. The librarian brings him a book with boats on the cover, but the father chooses instead a slender volume of gratitude entries, like the diary Beauty found in the walled orchard. He opens to a page and reads, stumbling and smiling, "Today I am grateful for my daughter, who taught me the right way to say we'll be all right is to do it." The practice room presents itself to the sisters like a good confession. They stand among the knitted trials, the wobble-footed carvings, the cups too thick with glaze and too rich with love to be anything but perfect. "Here," one sister whispers. "Here," the other repeats. And they mean, here is where we will become truly ourselves. A kitchen door swings open as they pass to let out the smell of onions beginning their long, sweet change. The younger sister inhales and closes her eyes. "Teach me," she says to the room, to the hands that once were invisible and are now her teachers. The room nods with its racks and its knives and its stove that understands patience. "We'll start with stock," says a voice full of competence and affection. "Every feast rests on something simple that has been listening for a long time." They go to the winter garden, the place that nearly learned how to play at funerals and now insists on weddings. The rose that opened at the exact moment of yes has grown only slightly, but something around it has changed. A few buds in the same bed have found their courage. Beauty's father stares, caught between memory and miracle. "There was a story," he murmurs, "about a rose promised and paid for with a life. This one looks like the receipt for a mercy." Beauty threads her arm through his. "We will hang a ribbon here after," she says, "a ribbon for keeping." "After?" he asks, because the day is so full of now that it is hard to believe in later. "After," the prince says, and the word is quiet and full. When two people make promises and call them home, they break for rest. Celebrations tire even the happy when joy keeps flexing inside the ribs like a new heart learning its strength. The sisters disappear into the kitchens and reappear with flour on their cheeks and triumph on their mouths. "Bread," they announce, "from our hands." The head of the household examines the loaves with theatrical severity and then cuts himself an end slice, the best, and slathers it with butter kept warm just long enough to become nearly a sauce. He eats with his eyes nearly closed, to listen better to what the bread is saying. "Yes," he declares, and the bread puffs itself in gratitude. In the late afternoon, the chapel with the low window fills itself. Not with crowds, there is no more room than a handful of benches can hold, but with exactly enough faces of exactly the right kind. The harper sits near the door and plays the parts of the heart that do not want to be spoken. The librarian stands in back and smiles at the floorboards, because that is where tears are allowed to be stored when a head refuses us to let them fall. The seamstress has brought a needle just in case something tears, not to fix fabric, but to fix the moment. She will stitch the air if needed. Beauty and the prince do not walk an aisle. They arrive by standing still. Together at the front, under a lintel that old hands carved long ago, with a branch and a bird in a way that taught wood to keep singing, they face the room, which is to say, they face their life. There is no officiant as important as the sentences they mean. The head of the household clears his throat and reads from the book of blessings that has lost track of its own age. He chooses words that are not afraid of smallness. May your days be made of ordinary mercy. May your nights be held by listening. May your table always have a stool for someone who didn't know they were hungry until they smelled your soup. The prince takes Beauty's hands. His palms are warm. His fingers remember how to place a teacup gently and how to hold a promise firmly. Beauty, he says, and her name, when he says it now, is a vow in itself. I will spend my life practicing how to be kind where it matters. I will fail and practice again. I will be big only when large is needed, and small whenever softness is better. I will keep faith with the hour before dawn. I will carry thank you like a coin I never run out of. I will be your home, and I will learn our home with you. Beauty answers as if reading a page her heart wrote long before her mouth learned its letters. I will be your reader and your rest. I will keep the practice room open. I will stand with you where the house breathes, and in the corners where the wind tries to gather dust. I will name what is good, so it grows braver. I will tell you the truth, even when it arrives without ribbons. I will teach our days to be gentle. I will be your home, and I will learn our home with you. The harper stops playing, so the silence can say, Amen. They exchange rings, not to lock, but to link. His ring is simple metal, with a thread of rose gold that looks like a path through a field at dusk. Hers is the same, but the path runs the other way. So when their hands are side by side, the two small roads meet and continue. They do not kiss extravagantly. They kiss as if the world is finely tuned and there is no need to turn the dial further. The room exhales through 30 good lungs. The librarian blows his nose softly into a handkerchief the house had earlier, tucked into his pocket for this very moment. The seamstress pricks her finger with her needle, surprised by joy, and laughs at herself for being so busy loving that she forgot where the point was. They walk out under a sky that has been polishing itself for hours. The courtyard has learned a new trick from the winter garden. It blooms, not with flowers, with faces. People from the town have come, those who remember the old prince as a rumor and the old castle as a warning. They stand near the gate in their best coats and their best hope. When they see the two, they do not cheer. They begin to hum the tune the harper played until the whole air vibrates with a human chord. The kitchens open their doors to the courtyard like arms. The sisters carry out loaves and bowls and a great tureen of soup that has been listening for a long time and is ready to speak. The prince rolls up his sleeves without ceremony and begins to ladle, which is the kind of king he will be. Beauty ties on an apron that does not care it is over a wedding dress and carries bread from hand to hand like a blessing. When a child spills, she kneels to wipe without remark. When an old man hesitates, the head of the household sets a stool behind his knees and says, "There," with an authority that brooks no argument. Someone, no one knows who started it, which is the best beginning, hangs ribbons in the winter garden. Each ribbon is a promise. To tell a friend they did well, to knock on a lonely door, to keep the kettle humble, to mend what can be mended and bless what cannot. A woman who has long kept to herself ties one that says only "begin." A boy ties one that says "please." A baker ties one that says "again," because bread has taught her that repetition is holy. At dusk, lamps appear at the edges of paths, and the lamps do not smoke or sputter. They glow the way a person glows after being forgiven. The harper moves to the fountain and plays water music, while the water plays harp music, and between the two a kind of conversation begins that the night will remember for years. Beauty leads her father to the rose bed that held the first yes. She ties the ribbon she promised, a deep, calm blue, around the stem of the rose that learned how to accept color. "Hold," she whispers. The rose holds. Her father presses his hand against hers for a long second. He is not giving her away, he is giving her forward. The prince stands a few paces back, not to make the moment smaller by crowding it. When Beauty turns, they smile at each other the way people smile when they have learned that there is no trick to joy beyond telling the truth kindly and keeping at it. The night opens her hem and spreads it over the grounds. Stars appear one at a time in the old courteous order. The household, which once was furniture, slips into a human evening with relief and grace. They nudge plates toward those who think they should not take seconds. They place shawls around shoulders that pretend not to be cold. They catch a teacup at the very edge of a fall with a reflex of people who have caught worse. When the eating becomes nibbling and the music becomes memory, the courtyard shifts to the ceremony the day has been saving for last. The head of the household raises his hand, not the hand that pointed for years at smudges on silver, but the hand that has placed spoons in the right spot so often that it understands the geometry of comfort. "Friends," he says, and the word carries through the dark like a ship's lantern. "Tonight we light the night of roses." Lanterns, prepared quietly in afternoon corners, are brought forward by many hands. Each is a small house of glass, with one candle inside and a paper shade cut with a rose in many styles. Open, tight, thorned, climbing, wild. The seamstress walks beside Beauty and the prince, offering them the first match. They light their lanterns from the same flame, then step to the winter garden, where the path has been edged with patient stones. They place their lanterns side by side. The light enters the paper roses and makes them glow, as if dawn had chosen to rehearse at night, in miniature. Others come forward, townsfolk, friends, staff, and place lanterns one by one, and the path becomes a quiet river of warm stars. A child counts and loses track at 20 and begins again at happy. Beauty and the prince take the last 2 lanterns and carry them to the chapel's low window. They set them on the sill and watch the light fall inside the room, that taught their vows where to sit. For remembering, Beauty says. For continuing, the Prince says. The chapel accepts both, holds both, and adds the most important word. Together, the harper plays the last song, the one the house uses when it wants to put an arm around a shoulder without making a fuss. People find their own goodbyes. The baker promises bread in the morning for anyone who rises too early to eat at home. The sisters promise the kitchen their hands again tomorrow, not because the kitchen is short of hands, but because making food for others has become the way they smooth their souls. The librarian quietly lends a small book of gratitudes to a woman who has never read one. She leaves with it under her arm the way a person leaves with a small bird they intend to learn how to hold. Finally, only quiet remains, the kind that is not emptiness but fullness, that has learned to rest. The house closes doors gently, checks latches without fretting, pulls blankets to the correct height on beds that have welcomed many today. The head of the household takes one last turn through the great hall with a candle he does not dare drip, nodding to chairs and tables as if thanking colleagues after a long performance. He leaves the candle on the sideboard, winks at it, and goes to his own rest. Beauty and the Prince stand on the balcony outside their chamber. The winter garden below them glows with those small, faithful lights. The fountain's voice has become the story of water coming back to where it belongs. A fox crosses the far lawn at an angle only foxes understand and leaves no mark on the snow because tonight the world is decided not to record footprints. They do not speak for long minutes. They have earned silence. When Beauty leans her head to his shoulder, he breathes out, something he will keep doing for the rest of his life when she comes near, not because he is relieved she is there, but because being near her is the deepest kind of rest he knows. "Tomorrow," she says at last, "we will open the library to the town. We will move the small stools to the low shelves so children can sit. We will leave the practice room door open. We will put a basket by the gate with bread and fruit, and a sign that says, 'Take what you need.' We will ask the roses to listen for new promises." "Yes," he says, because yes is the key that opens every locked door. "We will ask the steward to set 2 extra places at supper each night, in case someone arrives sad and doesn't know why. We will make the winter garden a school for keeping. We will invite the widower with the bad leg to teach us how to fix hinges without anger. We will buy more candles that don't drip." She laughs softly, and her laugh feels like a bird deciding to nest and then doing it well. "We will keep telling each other the truth even when it is small." "Especially then," he says, and in the dark his smile is a warm curve she knows without seeing. They go inside. Their chamber has made itself tender, the bed looking like a cloud that thinks, the fire dozing on purpose so it can wake when needed, the little table with 2 cups of water because 1 cup is never enough, when joy has taught your mouth to speak for hours. On the table lies the diary from the orchard, the book of gratitudes. Beauty opens to a blank page. She looks at him. "Shall we?" He nods. He has spent years learning to thank before asking. He takes the quill. His handwriting is careful and leans, just a little, toward her. He writes, "Grateful for a yes that changed the grammar of the world." He passes the quill. She writes beneath it, "Grateful for a house that learned to be useful, then happy, then holy." She adds, after a breath, "Grateful for the hour before dawn, and for a person who shares it." She leaves the book open so the ink can dry without smudging the moment. They bank the fire. They draw the curtain almost all the way and then leave it slightly ajar so the night can watch over them without boasting. When they lie down, the mattress sighs the sigh of a good servant who has just been promoted to friend. "Shall we sleep?" he asks, not because he doubts, but because he loves to hear her answer. "Yes," she says, and the word "as ever" is both an ending and a beginning. Before sleep closes their eyes, they speak to the darkness, not a spell, not a command, just the soft truth this story has been teaching since the first candle learned how to stand very still. You are safe. You are loved. You are home. The house holds the words and drops them like seeds into every corridor, every garden bed, every cushion on every chair. Outside, the lanterns burn down little by little, and each goes out when it is ready. No hurry, no smoke, just a tiny bow, and then a rest. The roses keep their watch. The fountain keeps its story. The stars keep their distance, which is how they love us best. Night, carrying her basket, emptied now of sleep because she has poured it over everything, smiles, draws the door of the world nearly closed, and leaves just enough space for morning to put its fingers under and lift when the hour, their hour, comes again.